As President Trump made his case for a border wall, fact checkers worked to keep him honest in real time. In a response streamed on social media, Senator Bernie Sanders took issue with who the president said would pay for the wall.
The wall will also be paid for indirectly by the great new trade deal we have made with Mexico.
That's a lie. If this wall were to be built, Mexico would not pay for it. American taxpayers would.
So Jeff Pegues breaks down the president's claim that there's a national security crisis going on at the border.
We have an absolute crisis.
To back up their argument that there's a national security crisis at the southern border, administration officials, including the vice president, have repeated the false claim that terrorists are pouring in.
Nearly 4,000 known or suspected terrorists were apprehended attempting to come into the United States.
Nearly 4,000 known or suspected terrorists come into our country illegally.
But in 2017, the State Department concluded that there was no credible evidence of international terrorists crossing the southern border. The president has also said that 17,000 criminals have been apprehended at the southern border in the last year.
17,000 criminals trying to get across the border. 17,000.
But in reality, just 6,000 were caught by Border Patrol, while an additional 10,000 were detained at airports and other ports of entry.
At some point, you have to question why we see repeated mistakes from very senior officials.
David Lippman was a top official in the Department of Homeland Security during the first year of the Trump administration. Do you think that the administration is misleading the public?
I think they are.
However, there is evidence supporting the administration's claim of a humanitarian crisis at the border. A record number of families with children have been apprehended, severely stretching Border Patrol resources. Many Democrats say that they would support increased funding to deal with that problem, but only if the wall wasn't included. Jeff Pegues, CBS News, Washington.
All right, Jeff, thanks. Daniel Lippman is the co-author of the Politico Playbook, and he joins me now from Washington. All right, Daniel, we're going to break this down, starting with the president's speech. The president actually didn't make any new policy announcements. People wondered whether or not he was going to officially declare this a national security crisis at the border. He did not do that. In fact, a lot of what we heard from the president is what we've been hearing, particularly in recent days, about a humanitarian crisis. Clearly, in recent days, there was a pivot. But it's nothing new. So, who was the intended audience, and what do you believe the effect was?
So I think the intended audience was congressional Republicans who have shown some signs of going wobbly with President Trump. They are tired of this government shutdown. They worry that Republicans are getting blamed by the public and that this is not a winning situation for them, given that Trump said in December that this was going to be a Trump shutdown. And so they want to find a way out of this. And there are some White House aides that want to do so as well.
So let's talk about the Democrat response. Chuck Schumer said that the symbol of America should be the Statue of Liberty. It shouldn't be a 30-foot wall. And you got to wonder whether or not this wall has really become a symbol that neither side can budge on. There's some reporting out there that the idea of the wall was actually a concept created by the president's campaign team to remind him to talk about the importance of immigration, but not necessarily to become a campaign promise. And that's what it's become. And now it seems like neither side can look like they're giving into the wall issue.
Yeah, Trump has really boxed himself in. And what's also ironic about the speech is that he didn't even see the utility of it. In a meeting with network anchors yesterday, he pointed to Bill Shine and Sarah Sanders and Kellyanne Conway, who were also in the room, and said, well, those people told me to give the speech and to go to the border tomorrow. He doesn't think that it's going to move the needle. He's been saying this type of stuff for years. And so I think the wall has really become the symbol of Trump's presidency, and that if it passes or if he's able to build it, then it'll be a great success for him. If not, then Democrats can say that they took him down on his signature campaign promise, and that makes it much harder for him to get his 2020 base out in next year.
So does that also box the Democrats in then? They can't be seen to be giving leeway to a wall, whether it's a steel wall or a concrete wall or a chain link fence or anything?
That's true, but they also feel like they've won the shutdown argument that Trump himself said, well, people on the Hill, they can resolve this in 45 minutes if they pass something. And so I think the thinking is that Democrats don't want to give in like less than a week after Nancy Pelosi became Speaker. That would make her position much less powerful if she just concedes so early on in tenure.
So, where do we go from here? I listened to what the president had to say, what Democrats had to say. It seems like basically both sides are digging in their heels. I don't know if there's any sort of middle ground, a place to meet. And we are quickly nearing the longest government shutdown that we've ever had. What's coming up in the next few days, do you think?
So Trump has that visit to the border tomorrow, and I think you might see the national emergency that he did not talk about yesterday. He might declare that in the next couple of weeks, maybe at the State of the Union as kind of a big show. That's a good opportunity for him to do that. And that would provide a way for him to reopen the government because the government would be trying to build this wall. But the issue with that is, of course, there's going to be huge legal consequences, and there's going to be a constitutional fight, and so it would likely get struck down. And then Trump can go to his base and say, well, I pushed really hard for this wall. I even declared a national emergency. I couldn't, I did everything I could, but Democrats and the courts stopped it, and then that would kind of have a face-saving way out of this, even though Democrats would say Trump is a dictator.
And for him, I guess it would be a way to sort of get the Democrats to own it. Daniel Lippman, thank you so much. I see you got up pretty early in the morning. We really appreciate you joining us.